Across the room, Damien sat in his leather armchair, fingers steepled beneath his chin, eyes fixed on the skyline of the city he'd conquered. His silhouette was sharp against the amber glow of the skyline, powerful, untouchable. But Elena knew better. She'd seen the cracks, the way his jaw tightened when he thought no one was looking, the silence that had grown thicker between them with every passing month. "You're quiet again," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile peace they'd been pretending to have. He didn't look at her. "I've got a lot on my mind." "More than usual?" She took a step forward, the cold marble biting into her soles. "Or is it just that I've become part of the furniture? Something you see but don't really notice anymore?" That made him turn. His eyes, once the color of stormy seas, the kind that used to pull her in with a single glance, now held a distance, a calculation. "Don't be dramatic, Elena. Dramatic." A dry laugh escaped her, brittle as old glass. "I've spent 12 years building a life with you, 12 years supporting your dreams, canceling mine, smiling at your parties while you talked over me like I was background noise. And now I'm dramatic for asking if you still see me." He stood, straightening his cufflinks with that practiced, detached grace that made him so magnetic in boardrooms and so cold at home. "You knew what this life was when you married me." "Did I?" Her voice cracked, just slightly. "I thought I was marrying a man who believed in partnership, not a king who needed a silent queen to decorate his throne." For a heartbeat, something flickered in his expression. Regret? Guilt? But it vanished as quickly as it came. He walked toward the bar, poured himself a whiskey, didn't offer her one. "People change, Elena. And you." She wrapped her arms around herself, not for warmth, but for the illusion of holding herself together. "Did you change? Or did you just finally stop pretending?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Outside, lightning split the sky, casting jagged shadows across the room. In that flash of light, she saw it, the truth she'd been avoiding. The way his gaze drifted toward his phone on the coffee table. The way his thumb hovered near a notification she wasn't meant to see. Her stomach dropped. "Is there someone else?" The words came out steady, but inside, her world was tilting off its axis. Damien set down his glass, didn't deny it, didn't confirm it, just said, "You've been distant." "I've been distant?" She laughed, a raw, broken sound. "While you've been working late every night, while you stopped touching me, stopped asking about my day, stopped remembering that I hate lilies because they remind me of my mother's funeral. That's my fault." He finally looked at her, and there was no love in his eyes, only impatience. "Maybe if you tried harder to be someone I'm not?" Her voice trembled, but her spine stayed straight. "No, Damien, I tried hard enough to be your wife. What you wanted was a trophy, and I refused to be polished into silence." He turned away again, toward the window, as if the city below offered him an escape she never could. "This isn't working." The words landed like a blade between her ribs. Not "I'm sorry," not "let's fix this," just "this isn't working." As if their marriage were a faulty appliance he could simply unplug. Elena closed her eyes. She felt the weight of every sacrifice, every lonely dinner, every time she swallowed her dreams so his could shine brighter. And in that moment, she didn't feel anger. She felt clarity. "You're right," she said softly. "It hasn't been working for a long time." He glanced back, surprised by her calm. "So what now?" She walked to the window, stood beside him, but not too close. "Never close again." "Now," she said, watching the rain blur the glittering towers into streaks of light. "I remember who I was before I became Mrs. Cross." And for the first time in years, she breathed freely, even as her heart broke. Certo, agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada topico que for desenvolve. Mi conti sobrio topico tu com dialogo como su faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita emoco. Com Guidos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters when 3 max the mansion stood like a monument carved from glass and silence. Sleek, towering, breathtaking. From the outside, it shimmered under the California sun. A jewel perched on the cliffs of Billionaire, visible to the world but unreachable. Inside, it echoed, not with laughter, not with warmth, but with the hollow resonance of footsteps on marble, of doors closing too softly, of voices lowered to avoid disturbing a peace that didn't truly exist. Elena walked through it now, early morning, the house still wrapped in the pale blue hush before dawn. She ran her fingers along the cold edge of the kitchen island, imported Italian stone, flawless, sterile. No crumbs, no coffee rings, no evidence that anyone had ever lived here. Just perfection, curated and controlled. She remembered the day they'd moved in. Damien had swept her through the rooms like a king showing off his new castle. "This is ours," he'd said, pride swelling in his chest. "Everything you ever wanted." But she hadn't wanted this. Not really. She'd wanted a home, a place where socks could be left on the floor, where pancakes could burn on Sunday mornings, where she could cry without worrying about smudging the designer wallpaper. Instead, she got a museum with her as both curator and ghost. "Mrs. Cross." A soft voice broke the stillness. Marta, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway, holding a tray with a single cup of tea, chamomile, no sugar, just how Elena liked it. "You're up early." Elena offered a faint smile. "Couldn't sleep." Marta hesitated, then stepped inside. "He didn't come home last night." The words landed like a stone in still water. Elena didn't flinch. She just wrapped her hands around the warm cup Marta handed her, as if drawing strength from its heat. "Again. This is the 4th time this month." Elena stared out the window. The infinity pool stretched toward the horizon, merging with the sky, endless and empty, just like the space between her and Damien. "He says he's working late," she murmured. Marta didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They both knew the truth lived in the way Damien's phone buzzed with messages he quickly silenced. In the new cologne he'd started wearing. Something floral, young, nothing like the sandalwood he used to love. "Do you remember?" Elena said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "When we first met? He brought me daisies because I told him they were the only flowers that didn't pretend to be something they weren't." Marta nodded gently. "I remember. You kept them in a mason jar on your desk for weeks, even after they dried." Elena's throat tightened. "Now he buys orchids by the dozen for whoever she is. Rare, expensive, showy." She let out a shaky breath. "Funny, isn't it? He used to say he loved me because I was real. Now he can't stand the sight of me unless I'm polished, silent, perfect." She turned from the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "This house, it's beautiful, Marta, but it's not a home. It's a cage made of crystal. And I've been polishing the bars so long, I forgot I was trapped." Marta reached out, squeezed her hand. "You don't have to stay." Elena looked down at her wedding ring. Platinum, simple, the only piece of jewelry Damien had let her choose. "I made a promise," she said quietly. "But promises shouldn't cost you your soul." The words struck deep. Elena closed her eyes. She thought of the nights she'd lain awake, listening to the silence, wondering when love had turned into performance, when us had become him and the image of us. Later that afternoon, Damien returned. Impeccable suit, crisp shirt, the scent of that new cologne clinging to his skin like a secret. He dropped his keys on the console, engraved with his initials, another symbol of control. "You're home early," Elena said, standing in the grand foyer, sunlight streaming through the skylight above, casting her in gold while he remained in shadow. Meeting ended sooner than expected. He didn't meet her eyes. "Is dinner ready?" She stepped closer. "Did you sleep at the office again?" Pause. "Too long. I was finalizing the Monaco acquisition. You know how it is. I know you haven't touched my hand in 3 months, she said, voice trembling but clear. I know you flinch when I kiss your cheek. I know you look at your phone like it holds something I never could. He finally looked at her, jaw tight. Don't make this dramatic, Elena. Then stop treating me like a liability in your perfect life. The words burst out, raw and unfiltered. This house is flawless. The art, the furniture, the view, even me. You've curated everything. But what happens when the exhibit gets boring, Damien? Do you just replace it? His eyes flashed. You're being irrational. No, she whispered, tears welling but not falling. I'm finally being honest. He turned away, heading for the study. I don't have time for this. Of course you don't, she called after him, her voice breaking. You never did. And in that moment, standing in the heart of their gilded prison, Elena realized the truth. The mansion wasn't the problem. It was the mirror, and every polished surface reflected a marriage that had died long ago, leaving only echoes and a woman who'd mistaken silence for peace. She walked back to the window, pressed her palm against the cool glass, and watched the sun dip below the hills. Somewhere out there, beyond the gates, and she didn't have to wait long. The elevator chimed softly, the doors slid open, and there she was, Isabella, young, too young, dressed in a tailored cream suit that hugged her frame like second skin. Her dark hair swept into a low chignon, lips painted the exact shade of wine Damien used to pour for Elena on their anniversary. She carried a leather portfolio and a confidence that didn't belong in someone so new. Oh, Isabella said, her voice smooth as silk, eyes widening just enough to feign surprise. Mrs. Cross, I didn't expect to find you here. Elena didn't move. This is my home. Pause. A flicker in Isabella's gaze. Something sharp beneath the polish. Of course. I just meant, I thought you'd be out. Yoga, charity luncheons, whatever it is you do. The words were wrapped in velvet, but the barb was clear. Elena stepped forward, slow, deliberate. I oversee the household, including new hires. She let the silence stretch. You're the art consultant? Advisor, actually, Isabella corrected with a faint smile. Damien trusts my eye. He says I understand the emotional value of a piece, not just the price tag. The way she said his name, familiar, intimate, sent a cold ripple down Elena's spine. Fascinating, Elena said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Because the last time Damien spoke about art, he called it a tax-efficient asset class. I didn't realize he'd developed such poetic sensibilities. Isabella's smile didn't waver, but her fingers tightened around her portfolio. People evolve. So I've noticed. A beat passed. The air between them thickened, charged with something unspoken. Recognition, perhaps. Two women circling the same truth, one pretending not to know it, the other refusing to name it aloud. Then, Isabella tilted her head, eyes drifting to a painting on the far wall. A fractured portrait, all jagged lines and muted sorrow. That one's new, she said. Damien bought it last week. Said it reminded him of a broken promise. Elena's breath caught. She knew that painting. She'd seen the invoice. She'd asked about it. He'd told her it was just another investment. Now, standing here with this woman quoting his private words like scripture, Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. Did he? Elena said softly. How curious. He never mentioned it to me. Isabella turned, meeting her gaze fully now. No pretense, just quiet triumph. Maybe he thought you wouldn't understand. The words hung there, sharp as shattered glass. Before Elena could respond, the elevator chimed again. Damien stepped out. He froze when he saw them. Elena rigid by the Rothko, Isabella poised like a queen surveying her court. His expression flickered. Surprise, then irritation, then something worse, calculation. Elena, he said, voice clipped. I didn't know you'd be here. I live here, she replied, the words tasting like ash. Isabella stepped forward, effortlessly closing the distance to Damien. We were just discussing the new acquisition. Your wife has excellent taste. though perhaps a bit traditional. Damien's hand brushed Isabella's shoulder as he passed. Casual, automatic. A gesture of ownership. Elena saw it, felt it like a slap. Isabella's reorganizing the West Wing, Damien said, avoiding Elena's eyes. Some pieces need to be rotated. The lighting's all wrong. Of course, Elena said, her voice eerily calm. Wouldn't want the emotional value to get lost in poor illumination. Damien frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, she said, turning toward the exit. Just admiring how well you two collaborate. She walked past them, heels clicking against marble, each step a battle to keep her composure. But as she reached the hallway, she heard it. Soft, deliberate. Isabella's voice, low and honeyed. She's still so present. And Damien's reply, quiet but clear, not for long. Elena stopped, her fingers curled into fists at her sides. The words didn't shock her. They confirmed her. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Anger, yes, but also clarity. She replayed every late night, every canceled dinner, every time Damien had looked at her like she was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be loved. And now there was a name, a face, a woman who walked into her home like she already owned it. But Elena knew something Isabella didn't. This house, this life was built on foundations Elena had helped lay. Damien might think he could erase her with silence and side glances, but she wasn't a ghost. Not yet. And if he wanted her gone, he'd have to say it to her face. The next morning, she found a single earring on the floor near Damien's study. Small, diamond, delicate. Not hers. She picked it up, held it in her palm like evidence. Then she placed it carefully in a drawer. Not to confront, not to accuse, but to remember. The Elena hadn't planned to come. But Marta had found her staring at the earring again that morning and said quietly, "If you disappear now, they'll think you've already lost." So she came, not to fight, not to beg, but to bear witness. And then Damien saw her. His smile faltered, just for a second, before he excused himself and walked toward her, the crowd parting like he was royalty. He stopped a few feet away, eyes scanning her as if she were an unexpected variable in a carefully calculated equation. "You came," he said. "I live here," she replied, echoing her words from days before. "Or have you forgotten?" He exhaled sharply, glancing back at Isabella, who watched them with the stillness of a predator. "We need to talk. Now." He didn't ask. He led her through the French doors onto the terrace, where the city sprawled below like a sea of stars. The wind tugged at Elena's hair, cool against her flushed skin. "You're making a scene," he said, voice low and edged with warning. "I haven't said a word. Your presence is a statement." He turned to her, jaw tight. "Elena, be reasonable. This isn't working." She laughed, a quiet, broken sound. Again with that phrase, as if we're discussing a faulty merger, not 12 years of my life. "I'm not blind," he snapped. "I see the way you look at her, the way you stand there like a martyr. You think I don't know you're trying to shame me? Shame you?" Her eyes burned. "Damien, I haven't said a word to anyone. Not to your friends, not to the staff, not even to myself out loud. But you parade her through my home like I'm already gone. You are gone," he said, the words slicing through the night. "In every way that matters. You stopped fighting for us. You stopped feeling." Her breath hitched. "Because you made it clear my feelings didn't matter unless they served your image." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You became cold, distant. All you ever did was remind me of what I owed you. Well, I've paid my debts, Elena. Every damn one. Paid." Tears finally spilled, but she didn't wipe them away. "Love isn't a transaction. But I see now you never understood that. To you, I was just another asset to manage. And now you've found a newer model." He flinched just slightly but didn't deny it. Inside, the music swelled. Laughter floated through the open doors. Life went on, oblivious. "You want me to leave, don't you?" she asked, voice trembling but clear. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "It would be easier. For who? You? Her? Or your perfect narrative?" "For everyone," he said, turning toward the city. "You deserve more than a marriage that's become a performance. And I can't keep pretending." The irony wasn't lost on her. He accused her of pretending when he was the one living a lie. She looked at him, really looked. The man she'd loved was still there, buried under layers of ego and fear. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not when it came wrapped in cruelty. "Then say it," she whispered. "Say it to my face. Don't hide behind 'it's not working.' Tell me you don't want me. Tell me you never will again." He turned. His eyes were hard, but she saw the flicker, the guilt, the cowardice. "I don't want you," he said, each word deliberate, cold. "Not like this. Not anymore." The wind stilled. The world narrowed to that single sentence. And in that moment, something inside Elena broke. And something else was born. She nodded slowly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Then I'll go." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key, the master key to the mansion, engraved with the Cross family crest. He held it out. "Take it," he said, "and don't come back." She stared at the key. It gleamed under the terrace lights, heavy with symbolism. Not just a key to a house, but to a life she'd built, a dream she'd nurtured, a self she'd nearly lost. Slowly, she took it. Her fingers closed around the cold metal. Not with defeat, with resolve. "I won't," she said, voice steady now, stronger than it had been in years. "But remember this, Damien, when you hand someone the key to your house, you assume they needed your permission to walk away. I didn't." She turned and walked back inside, past the glittering crowd, past Isabella's smug gaze, past the life she was leaving behind. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't look back. The night air clung to her skin as she stepped into the waiting car. The driver, loyal to her, not him, met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Where to, Mrs. Cross?" Had were the clothes on her back, the diamond studs in her ears, and $387 in cash tucked inside her clutch. Money she'd been secretly setting aside for months, just in case. Just in case this happened. Now, parked outside a modest apartment complex in Silver Lake, 3 stories high, paint peeling, bougainvillea spilling over cracked balconies. Elena stepped out into the cool night air. The key to Unit 2B felt flimsy in her hand compared to the mansion's master key. But it was hers, paid for in cash under a friend's name, just in case Damien's lawyers came looking. Inside, the space was small, barely a studio, but clean. A single window looked out onto a courtyard with a struggling lemon tree. No marble, no infinity pool, just a twin bed, a hot plate, and silence that didn't echo with expectation. She sank onto the edge of the bed, finally letting the tears come, quiet, shuddering sobs that had been dammed up for years. She cried for the love she'd believed in, for the future she'd imagined, for the woman she'd let disappear behind the title of Mrs. Cross. But as dawn broke, painting the walls in soft pink light, something shifted. She stood, washed her face, looked at herself in the smudged mirror above the sink, and saw Elena again. Not the wife, not the ghost in the glass palace, just her. Across town, Damien sat alone in the study, the same room where he'd once proposed to her over blueprints of that very mansion. The party had ended hours ago. Isabella had stayed, of course, draping herself over the leather sofa like a prize. "You handled that well," she'd purred, swirling her wine. She didn't even make a scene. He hadn't answered. He just stared at the empty space where Elena used to sit, reading, sketching, living. Now, morning light filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the floor like prison bars. Isabella entered, wearing his shirt, barefoot. "You're brooding," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Don't tell me you're having second thoughts." He didn't look at her. "I did what needed to be done." "Good." She walked over, trailing fingers down his shoulder. "Because I've already started planning the redesign. That West Wing is so her. He stiffened. Leave it. She blinked. What? The art, the furniture, the layout. Don't touch it. Isabella's smile faltered. But you said you wanted a fresh start. I want my start, he said, finally meeting her eyes. Not yours. Something cold passed between them, a crack in the illusion. Meanwhile, Elena stood in a second-hand bookstore that morning, flipping through an old architecture textbook she remembered loving in college. The shop owner, a woman with silver braids and kind eyes, watched her. You look like you're searching for more than just a book, she said. Elena smiled faintly. Maybe I am. That afternoon, she called Dr. Langley, her old thesis advisor, now head of a small urban design firm. Elena Cross? The woman said, voice warm with surprise. I heard you'd stepped away from the field. I did, Elena admitted. But I'm ready to come back. There was a pause. We're hiring a junior designer for a community housing project in East LA. Pays modest. Hours are long. I'll take it. As she hung up, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You really think you can survive out there? You've never worked a real day in your life. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she typed, slow and sure. I've worked every day of my life, Damien. Just not for a paycheck. But don't worry, I'll earn this one. She hit send. And for the first time, she didn't wait for a reply. Back at the mansion, Damien stared at his phone, jaw clenched. Isabella watched from the doorway, arms crossed. She's not coming back, you know, she said softly. He didn't answer, because deep down, he knew something worse. He didn't want her to. Not like this. Not broken. But what if she wasn't broken? What if she was becoming something he could never control? And what if, just what if, he'd thrown away the only person who ever truly saw him? Not as a billionaire, but as a man. The thought settled like a stone in his chest. Outside, the city hummed on, indifferent. But that morning, everything changed. She was tying her hair back, preparing for her first site visit, when a sharp knock rattled her door. Not the tentative tap of a neighbor, not the buzz of a delivery. This was authoritative, final. She opened it. Damien stood there, not in a suit, but in dark jeans and a black sweater, hair slightly disheveled, eyes shadowed with something she couldn't name. Behind him, a sleek black town car idled at the curb, and beside him, Isabella, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line of impatience. Elena's breath caught, her pulse hammered, but she didn't step back. What are you doing here? Damien's gaze swept over her, over the worn sweater, the bare feet, the life she'd built in silence. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Regret, curiosity, then it vanished. We need to settle this, he said, voice low but firm. Settle what? You already kicked me out. This isn't about that. He reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope. Sign the papers. Today. She didn't take it. What papers? The separation agreement. Full relinquishment of marital assets. In exchange, you'll receive a lump sum, enough to disappear quietly. Isabella shifted beside him, voice dripping with false sympathy. It's generous, really. Most men wouldn't offer anything after everything. Elena's eyes snapped to her. After everything? You mean after I refused to pretend your affair didn't exist? Isabella's smile tightened. I mean after you made it impossible for Damien to move forward. Move forward? Elena laughed, bitter and sharp. You mean move on? With you playing house in the home I helped build? Damien stepped between them. Enough. Just sign, Elena. Don't make this uglier than it has to be. She looked at him, really looked. The man who once held her through panic attacks, who whispered, "You're my compass," on their wedding night, now stood before her like a stranger demanding surrender. And if I don't? She asked softly. Then I'll file for divorce on grounds of emotional abandonment, he said coldly. And you'll get nothing, not even your name. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Isabella smirked. Honestly, Elena, be practical. You have no income, no leverage. What do you think you're holding out for? Elena turned slowly, walked back into her tiny apartment, and picked up her keys from the counter. Then she returned to the doorway, eyes blazing. "I'm holding out for dignity," she said. "Something you clearly don't understand." Damien's jaw tightened. "Don't be foolish." "I'm not being foolish," she said, voice trembling but clear. "I'm choosing myself, and if that means walking away with nothing but my name and my truth, so be it." Isabella scoffed. "Your truth? Please, you're just bitter." "No," Elena said, stepping fully into the hallway, closing the door behind her. "I'm awake." She walked past them, down the narrow stairwell, heart pounding but head high. She could feel their eyes on her back, the billionaire who thought money could erase a woman, and the mistress who thought beauty could buy a legacy. But halfway down the steps, Damien's voice stopped her. "Elena!" She turned. He held out a single object. Not the envelope, not a check. The mansion key. "Take it," he said, voice rough. "Consider it closure." She stared at it. The same key he'd thrust into her hand the night he cast her out, now offered like a peace offering, like a final insult. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she walked back up the stairs, stopped inches from him, and looked him in the eye. "You want to give me the key?" she whispered. "Then hand it to me like a man who knows what he's lost, not like a king tossing a bone to a stray." He flinched. Isabella grabbed his arm. "Damien, let's go." "She's not worth it." For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Then, with a sharp exhale, he dropped the key into her open palm. It landed with a soft clink. Elena closed her fingers around it, not with gratitude, but with quiet resolve. "Keep your money," she said. "But remember this. The day you handed me this key, you didn't lock me out. You locked yourself in." She turned and walked away. This time, she didn't look back. Behind her, the town car. Door slammed. Tires screeched as they drove off. But Elena kept walking. Toward the bus stop, toward her job, toward a future she would build with her own hands. And as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows behind her, she knew one thing for certain. Her new apartment was even smaller than the last. Just a single room above a laundromat, the walls thin enough to hear every cycle spin and every argument from the couple downstairs. But it was hers, paid for with the last of her hidden cash and the first paycheck from the design firm. $1, $200 taxed, real earned. She unpacked slowly. A second-hand desk, a folding chair, a thrift store lamp with a crooked shade. No art on the walls yet. No photos, just space, room to breathe. That night, rain began to fall, soft at first, then relentless. She sat on the floor, back against the bed, sketching by lamplight. The community housing project was due in 2 weeks, and she wanted it perfect. Solar panels, communal gardens, wide hallways for strollers and wheelchairs. A place where people didn't just survive, they belonged. Her phone buzzed, a notification from her bank. Account balance, $47.32. She stared at it, swallowed hard, then turned off the screen. A knock at the door startled her. Not loud, not urgent, just there. She opened it cautiously. Marta stood in the hallway, soaked from the rain, holding a duffel bag and a paper bag that smelled of warm bread. "Marta," Elena whispered, stunned. The older woman's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't stay," she said simply. "Not after what he did. Not after seeing you walk out with nothing." Elena pulled her inside, wrapping her in a dry towel. "You quit." "I told him I wouldn't serve a house that had no heart," Marta said, voice trembling. "He offered me double to stay. I told him money doesn't warm an empty room." Elena hugged her tightly, the first real comfort she'd felt in weeks. Later, over tea brewed in a chipped pot, Marta opened the duffel bag. Inside, Elena's favorite cashmere scarf, her grandmother's locket, the one Damien had misplaced years ago, and a thick envelope. "What's this?" Elena asked. "Your documents," Marta said. "Passport, birth certificate, and your old student portfolio. I found it in the storage vault. He was going to shred it next week." Elena's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Her early designs, bold and full of life, covered in professor's notes. Elena Visionary. Never stop drawing. I also brought this, Marta said, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was her wedding ring. Elena stared at it. Then, without a word, she walked to the window, opened it, and dropped the ring into the rain-soaked alley below. Marta didn't flinch. Good. But the next morning, reality crashed in. Elena arrived at the construction site only to find the project manager, a man named Ruiz, shaking his head. Funding's been pulled, he said grimly. Some investor backed out last minute. They're halting all work. Who? Elena asked, heart sinking. Cross Holdings, he said, avoiding her eyes. Damien Cross's firm. The name hit her like a punch. Of course, he couldn't control her life anymore, so he'd sabotage her future. She stood in the mud, rain soaking her hair, watching workers pack up their tools. The dream she'd poured her soul into, gone. That night, she sat on her floor again. Sketches spread around her like fallen soldiers. Marta cooked soup in silence. Finally, Elena spoke, voice raw. What do I do now? Marta knelt beside her. You fight. How? I have no money, no connections. He owns half the city. You have your mind, Marta said firmly, and you have truth. And sometimes that's enough. Elena looked at her old portfolio, at the designs that once made professors lean forward in awe. An idea sparked. Not a plea, not a protest. Proposal. She stayed up all night, redrawing, reimagining, not just housing, but a full community center. Childcare, job training, mental health services. Place for women like her, like Marta, like the ones who'd been discarded and told they were nothing. By dawn, her hands were stained with ink, her eyes bloodshot, but her spirit burned. She printed one copy, dressed in her only clean blouse, took the bus downtown, and walked into the office of Councilwoman Reyes, the one who'd publicly criticized Cross Holdings for displacing vulnerable communities. The receptionist frowned. Do you have an appointment? No, Elena said, holding out her portfolio. But I have a plan that could save 50 families from homelessness, and I think she'll want to hear it. The woman hesitated, then picked up the phone. 2 hours later, Elena sat across from the councilwoman, heart pounding, as Reyes flipped through her pages. This is extraordinary, Reyes said quietly. Where did you study? UCLA, before I got married. Reyes looked up, eyes sharp. And your name is? Elena Cross, she said. Then, after a pause, formerly, the councilwoman leaned forward. I know what he did to you. Elena didn't flinch. Then you know I'm not asking for charity. I'm offering a solution. Reyes smiled. Good, because I hate victims, but I love fighters. She extended her hand. Let's build something he can't destroy. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. That man felt like a ghost now, a memory wrapped in warmth, but haunting all the same. She closed her eyes, and the past rushed in, not as a dream, but as a wound reopening. You're my compass, Lena, he'd whispered that night, forehead pressed to hers, the fire crackling behind them. Without you, I'd be lost in all this noise. She'd believed him, built her life around that belief. Now, in the silence of her tiny room, she let herself feel it all. The love that had been real, the betrayal that had been realer. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Elena, Marta's voice, gentle through the door. You're still up. Can't sleep, she called back. The door creaked open. Marta stood there in a faded robe, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She sat beside Elena without a word, handing her one. They sat in silence for a long moment, watching the moon cast silver paths across the floor. He wasn't always cruel, Elena said finally, voice barely above a whisper. In the beginning, he saw me, really saw me. Marta nodded. I know. I watched you 2 dance in the kitchen at 2 a.m. after your first big fight. He made you laugh until you cried. Elena's throat tightened. So what happened? Power, Marta said simply. It doesn't corrupt everyone the same way. For some, it magnifies who they are. For others, it erases them. And Damien? He forgot how to be human when he decided being a god was easier. Elena looked down at the photo again. I keep wondering, if I'd fought harder, spoken louder, stayed softer, would it have been enough? Marta turned to her, eyes fierce. Don't do that to yourself. You can't love someone into staying. And you certainly can't shrink yourself into being enough for a man who only wants a reflection, not a partner. Elena swallowed. Then why does it still hurt? Because love doesn't vanish when betrayal arrives, Marta said softly. It just changes shape. What you're grieving isn't the man he became. It's the man you thought he was, and the future you built around that hope. Tears spilled then, quiet and hot. Not for Damien. Not anymore. For the girl who'd believed in forever. For the years she'd given without keeping a single piece for herself. Marta wrapped an arm around her. Let it go, Mija. Not because he deserves your forgiveness, but because you deserve your peace. Elena leaned into her, the weight of 12 years finally cracking open. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Somewhere a baby cried. Life went on, messy, loud, real. And in that moment, Elena made a choice. She wouldn't let the past define her future. She carefully placed the photograph back into the sketchbook, but this time not in the front, in the very back, behind new drawings, behind plans for the community center, behind a life she was building now. The next morning, she walked into the councilwoman's office with her head high and her portfolio under her arm. Reyes greeted her with a firm handshake. We got the preliminary grant approved, she said, eyes gleaming. City's allocating the old Miller lot on 7th and Olive. It's yours, if you can present a full proposal by Friday. Elena's heart leapt. I can. But as she stepped back onto the street, her phone buzzed. An unknown number, a voice message. She played it. Damien's voice, low, strained. Elena, I heard about the project. Don't do this. You don't know what you're stepping into. She stared at the screen, then deleted it, because she knew exactly what she was stepping into. A chance to build something that couldn't be bought, sold, or taken away. Something real. Damien sat alone in the study, the city lights flickering below like distant stars he could no longer reach. The gala invitations piled up unopened. The board meetings blurred together. Even the deals, the billion-dollar mergers that once made his blood sing, now felt hollow, like moving pieces on a board with no endgame. He poured himself a whiskey, neat, and stared at the empty chair across from him. Elena used to sit there, legs curled beneath her, sketching while he worked. She'd hum old jazz tunes under her breath, and sometimes, when he looked up, she'd be watching him with that quiet smile, the one that said, I see you. All of you. Now, the only sound was the click of heels on marble. Isabella appeared in the doorway, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe now. She held a tablet in one hand, a glass of champagne in the other. You've been brooding all week, she said, voice light but edged with impatience. The Monaco deal is slipping. You missed 2 calls from Zurich. I'm not in the mood for business, he muttered. Well, you don't have a choice, she snapped, setting the tablet down. Your ex-wife is making headlines. Did you see this? She turned the screen toward him. There it was, a local news snippet. Former socialite Elena Cross unveils vision for Women's Community Hub in downtown LA. Below it, a photo of Elena standing beside Councilwoman Reyes. Hair pulled back, eyes bright with purpose, wearing a simple blouse and a look he hadn't seen in years. Alive. His chest tightened. She's using your name, Isabella said, voice sharp. Elena Cross, as if she still owns a piece of you. She doesn't, he said quickly. Too quickly. Isabella studied him, then laughed. A brittle, knowing sound. You miss her. I don't miss her, he growled. I miss the peace she used to bring. The silence. The order. Liar, Isabella said softly, stepping closer. You miss the way she looked at you like you were worth something, even when you weren't. He flinched, because she was right. He missed the way Elena never asked for anything. except his honesty. And he'd given her everything but that. Isabella sat on the arm of his chair, trailing a finger down his chest. You could stop her, you know? One call to the zoning board, a whisper to the investors. She's got nothing but dreams and borrowed goodwill. He looked at her, really looked, saw the calculation in her eyes, the hunger for control disguised as concern. And what would that prove? He asked quietly. That you're still in charge, she said, as if it were obvious. But he shook his head. No, it would prove I'm still afraid. Afraid of her? Isabella laughed. She's living above a laundromat, Damien. And building something real, he said, voice low, while we're just decorating a tomb. Her smile vanished. Don't compare us to her. Why not? He stood, walking to the window. You wanted this life. The mansion, the title, the access. Well, here it is. Cold. Empty. Perfect. She followed him, voice rising. I gave up everything for you. My career, my independence. You gave up nothing, he said, turning to face her. You traded one kind of transaction for another. But Elena, she gave me her trust, her future, her silence, and I threw it away like it was nothing. Isabella's eyes flashed. Then go get her back. I can't, he whispered, because she's not the woman who left, and I'm not the man she loved. For the first time, Isabella looked uncertain. So what now? He didn't answer, because in that moment, he realized the truth. He wasn't mourning the loss of Elena. He was mourning the loss of the man he could have been with her. Later that night, alone again, he opened his laptop. Not to check stocks, not to send emails. He typed her name and scrolled through every article, every photo, every quote. This center isn't about me, she told a reporter. It's for every woman who was told she wasn't enough and proved them wrong. He closed the laptop, walked to the West Wing, the one Isabella had begged to redesign. He stopped in front of the fractured portrait Elena had once asked about. The one he'd said reminded him of a broken promise. Now he saw it clearly. It wasn't about her. It was about him. And as the city slept below, Damien Cross, the billionaire, the titan, the man who owned everything, stood in his perfect mansion, utterly alone, finally understanding the cost of his pride. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the silence screamed. And somewhere across town, Elena slept peacefully, unaware that the man she hadn't slept much, not because of fear, but because her mind wouldn't stop racing with possibilities. What if we add a childcare wing? What if we partner with local therapists? What if this becomes more than a building? What if it becomes a lifeline? A knock at her door startled her. Come in, she called. Marta stepped inside, holding a folded newspaper and a bag of warm pan dulce. You're going to burn yourself out, she said, setting the bag on the desk. Elena smiled faintly. I can't afford to slow down. The city council vote is in 3 days. If I don't have every detail airtight, they'll hand the lot to some luxury condo developer. Marta handed her the paper. Then you'll be glad to see this. Elena unfolded it. Front page of the local section, Elena Cross's vision captivates city leaders. A beacon for the forgotten, says Councilwoman Reyes. Below it, a photo of her standing at the vacant lot, wind in her hair, pointing to where the entrance would be. Her breath caught. They printed it. They didn't just print it, Marta said, eyes shining. People are talking. Women are calling the council office asking how to get involved. A group of nurses offered to volunteer. A bakery down the street wants to sponsor the kitchen. Elena's hands trembled as she set the paper down. I didn't think anyone would care. People care when someone speaks the truth, Marta said softly. And you're not hiding anymore. That afternoon, Elena walked to the site alone. The lot was fenced off, weeds pushing through cracked concrete, graffiti on the old warehouse wall. But she didn't see decay. She saw potential. She closed her eyes and imagined laughter echoing where silence now lived. Children running where shadows once pooled. Beautiful, isn't it? She turned. A woman stood nearby, mid-40s, tired eyes, a faded jacket wrapped tightly around her. She held a small girl's hand. "I heard you're building something here," the woman said. "For women like me." Elena's throat tightened. "Yes, a place to start over." The woman nodded slowly. "My name's Rosa. I left my husband 6 months ago. Slept in my car for 3 weeks before a shelter took me in." She looked at her daughter, who clung to her leg. She hasn't smiled in months. Elena knelt, meeting the little girl's eyes. "What's your name?" "Luz," the girl whispered. "Light," Elena said, smiling. "That's perfect, because this place, it's going to be full of light." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Will there be a room for us?" "There will be a home for you," Elena said, standing. "I promise." As they walked away, Elena felt something shift inside her. Not just purpose, but power. Not the kind that came from wealth or status, but from connection, from being seen, from seeing others. Later that evening, back in her room, she opened her laptop to finalize the budget. An email notification popped up. From Damien Cross. Her pulse spiked. She almost deleted it, but curiosity won. She clicked. No subject line, just 3 lines. "I saw the article. You were always better at building than I was. Don't let them take this from you." She stared at the screen. No apology, no plea, just acknowledgement. And for the first time, it felt like he truly saw her. Not as his wife, not as a ghost, but as Elena. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete it either. Instead, she printed the community center blueprint, pinned it to the wall beside her bed, and wrote in bold letters at the top, "This is mine." Outside, the city hummed with life. She spoke clearly, passionately, about the community center. How it would offer housing for displaced women, job training, mental health support, childcare. How it would be built with sustainable materials, powered by solar energy, run by the very people it served. She quoted Rosa. She mentioned Luz. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for partnership. Applause erupted when she finished. Councilwoman Reyes gave her a proud nod. But as Elena stepped down, a man in a tailored suit intercepted her near the exit. "Ms. Cross," he said, extending a hand. "Jonathan Price. I represent a coalition of private investors. We're deeply moved by your vision." Elena shook his hand cautiously. "Thank you. We'd like to offer full funding," he said, eyes gleaming. "No strings. Just your word that we can be listed as founding sponsors." Her breath caught. Full funding meant construction could start in weeks, not months. It meant Rosa and Luz wouldn't have to wait. But something in his smile felt rehearsed. "Who exactly is in this coalition?" she asked. He hesitated just a fraction of a second. "Discreet benefactors. They prefer to remain anonymous for now." She frowned. "I can't accept money I can't trace. This project is about transparency." His smile tightened. "Of course, I'll send the paperwork. Think it over." She nodded, but unease coiled in her stomach. That night, back in her room, she pored over the draft agreement Marta had printed. Buried in Clause 7, B sponsor retains right of first refusal on future property development adjacent to the site. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't support. It was a land grab. They weren't funding her center. They were using it as a Trojan horse to claim the surrounding blocks for luxury condos. And she knew who was behind it. Damien wouldn't do this. He'd warned her to protect her dream. But Isabella? Isabella would see a vulnerable project and an opportunity. The next morning, Elena called Jonathan Price. "I decline your offer," she said firmly. There was a pause. Then, coolly, "That's unfortunate. Without our backing, the city may reconsider allocating the lot to you. Maintenance costs alone will bankrupt you in 6 months. I'll find another way. Will you?" His voice dropped. "Because word on the street is you're living on borrowed time and borrowed couches." She hung up. Panic threatened to rise, but she pushed it down. She wouldn't let fear dictate her choices again. Instead, she walked to the laundromat below, where Rosa was folding clothes for extra cash. "Rosa," Elena said, sitting beside her. Would you be willing to speak at a fundraiser? Rosa looked up, surprised. Me? Yes. Your story. Luz's smile. The truth. Rosa's eyes filled. People care about that? They care more than you know. Within days, Elena organized a grassroots event in a borrowed church hall. Local bakers donated pastries. Musicians played for free. Women showed up, dozens of them with stories of survival, resilience, hope. Elena stood at the mic again, not in a council chamber, but among her people. This center isn't mine, she said, voice thick with emotion. It's ours, and no amount of money can buy what we're building here, because it's built on truth. Donations poured in $5, $20, $100. Not enough to fund the whole project, but enough to prove they weren't alone. That night, as she counted cash at her kitchen table, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. Walk away while you still can. I, Isabella. Elena stared at the screen, then typed back, slow and sure. I walked away once. Never again. She hit send. And for the first time, she didn't feel fear. Not Marta's gentle tap. Not Rosa's hesitant rap. This was sharp. Insistent. She opened the door. Damien stood there, soaked, his coat dark with rain. His eyes hollow in a way she'd never seen before. No entourage. No Isabella. Just him. Unshaven, shoulders slumped, looking less like a titan and more like a man who'd been walking through fire. Elena, he said, voice rough. She didn't invite him in. What are you doing here? He glanced down the hall, as if expecting someone to appear. I need to talk to you. Alone. You lost that right. Please. The word cracked, raw, desperate. Not for me. For the center. She hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered, dripping on the worn rug, and stood awkwardly in the center of the room, taking in the sketches on the walls, the second-hand furniture, the life she'd built without him. You've done this, all of this, with nothing, he said quietly. I had everything I needed, she replied. My name, my hands, my truth. He turned to her, eyes burning. Isabella's behind the investor offer. She's working with Price. They're trying to sink you. I know. You know? He ran a hand through his wet hair. Then why haven't you backed down? Because this isn't just a building, Damien, she said, stepping closer. It's a promise. To every woman who was told she was nothing, including me. He flinched. I didn't come to argue. I came to help. She laughed. A short, bitter sound. With what? Another check. Another condition. Another way to control the narrative. No, he said, pulling an envelope from his inner pocket. With this. He held it out. She didn't take it. What is it? The deed to the Miller lot. Fully transferred. No liens. No hidden clauses. It's yours. Legally. Irrevocably. Her breath caught. Why? Because I finally understand what you were trying to tell me, he said, voice breaking. You didn't want my money. You wanted your dignity, and I took that from you. I can't give you back the years, but I can give you this. She stared at the envelope, at the man who once held her heart, and shattered it. And Isabella? She asked. She's gone, he said flatly. Turns out loyalty has an expiration date when the stock price drops. Elena finally took the envelope, felt heavier than paper, felt like justice. But then she looked up, eyes sharp. You're not doing this out of guilt. No, he admitted. I'm doing it because for the first time in my life, I'm proud of someone, and it's you. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. Then Elena walked to the window, opened it, and let the rain wash over her face for a moment. When she turned back, her voice was steady. I won't take it as a gift. He frowned. What do you mean? I'll buy the lot, she said, at market value, with my own money, from you, legally, transparently. He stared at her. You don't have that kind of money. I will, she said. The community will. Every dollar will be accounted for. Every name remembered. He nodded slowly. Then I'll sell it to you. Full price. No discounts. No favors. Good, she said, because I don't want your charity. I want your respect. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, she saw not the billionaire, not the husband, but the man beneath. Broken, humbled, finally awake. He turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Elena, she waited. You once told me I didn't give you back the keys to my heart, only to the prison. She said nothing. He swallowed hard. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope one day you'll believe I'm trying to be better. Then he stepped into the rain and didn't look back. Elena closed the door. She was sipping bitter coffee when her phone rang. A known number. She almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, dread, curiosity, made her press accept. Elena Cross? A woman's voice asked, sharp and trembling. Yes, this is Dr. Lin, from Cedars-Sinai. Isabella Moretti listed you as her emergency contact. Elena froze. Why would she? She's in labor, Dr. Lin cut in. Premature, 32 weeks. She's asking for you. The words landed like ice in her veins. She's mistaken. I'm not. She insisted, the doctor said firmly. Said you'd understand. Said you're the only one who knows the truth. Elena's mind raced. The truth? Whose truth? Against every instinct, she went. The hospital hallway smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. She found Isabella in a private room, pale beneath the fluorescent lights, one hand gripping the bed rail, the other clutching her swollen belly. Her usual polish was gone. Hair tangled, eyes red-rimmed, fear raw on her face. When she saw Elena, she let out a shaky breath. You came. I shouldn't have, Elena said, stopping in the doorway. But I needed to hear it from you. Whose child is that? Isabella winced as another contraction hit. I don't know, she whispered when it passed. It could be his, or it could be someone else's. Elena's stomach dropped. You slept with someone else while you were with Damien? Isabella let out a broken laugh. While I was with him, please, I was never with him. I was with his name, his money, his power. But men like that, they get bored. So I kept my options open. Elena stared at her, disgust warring with pity. And now you're bringing a child into that mess? I didn't plan this, Isabella snapped, tears spilling. But it's happening. And Damien, he thinks it's his. He's already talking about trust funds, private schools, like this baby is his redemption arc. Elena stepped closer, voice low and fierce. Then tell him the truth. I can't, Isabella cried. He'll cut me off. I'll have nothing. No money, no status, no future. And you think dragging an innocent child into your lie gives you one? Elena shot back. You think Damien will raise a child he's not sure is his? He'll test the DNA the moment the baby's born. And when he finds out, he'll destroy you. Isabella looked away, trembling. Maybe I was hoping he'd choose to believe it anyway. That love would be enough. Damien doesn't know how to love without control, Elena said quietly. And you don't know how to love at all. Silence filled the room, broken only by the monitor's steady beep. Then Isabella turned, eyes pleading. What do I do? Elena exhaled slowly. You tell him, before the birth. Give him the chance to walk away or stay, if he truly wants to be a father regardless of blood. Isabella shook her head. He'll hate me. He already does, Elena said gently. But this baby deserves honesty, even if it hurts. Isabella buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Elena turned to leave. Elena, Isabella called weakly. Why did you come? Elena paused at the door. Because once I was you, believing a man's wealth could fill the hole in my soul. I stayed silent to keep what I thought was mine. And I lost myself. She looked back, eyes glistening. Don't make my mistake. Choose the truth even if it leaves you with nothing. Because from nothing, you can build something real. She walked out into the hallway, heart pounding. Her phone buzzed. A text from Damien. Isabella's in labor. They won't tell me anything. Did you see her? Elena stared at the screen, then typed, "Go to her. Not as a billionaire, not as a husband, as a man who might become a father. And whatever you do, ask the truth." She hit send. And as she stepped into the elevator, she felt the weight of the past finally begin to lift, because the greatest act of courage wasn't building a center. And come it did. By mid-morning, the headlines exploded. Cross-empire crumbles. Insider leaks reveal fraud, cover UPS, and secret paternity scandal. She read the article with numb disbelief. Someone, likely a disgruntled former employee, had leaked internal emails, financial discrepancies, and, most damning of all, a recording, not of corporate malfeasance, but of Isabella, voice thick with wine and spite, laughing with a friend in a private lounge. "Damien thinks the baby's his? Please, he's so desperate for an heir. He'll believe anything. Let him fund it. By the time the DNA comes back, I'll be on a yacht in St. Tropez." The recording had been time-stamped 3 days before her hospital admission. The fallout was immediate. Stocks in Cross Holdings plummeted 42% in a single day. The SEC launched an emergency investigation, not just into the financial irregularities, but into whether Damien had knowingly misled investors about his personal stability to mask corporate risk. Board members resigned. Partners distanced themselves. Even the luxury brands that once clamored for his endorsement issued silent, swift breaks. And Isabella? She vanished. No press statement, no social media, just an empty hospital room, a discharged file, and rumors she'd boarded a private jet to Lisbon under a false name. Elena watched it all unfold from her tiny kitchen table, the news playing on a second-hand laptop Marta had found at a flea market. Then her phone rang. Damien. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. On the fourth call, she answered. "Elena." His voice was hoarse, stripped bare. "They're calling for my resignation. The board, they're selling off assets. Everything." "I know," she said quietly. "You warned me," he said, "about her, about the truth." "I didn't want this," she said. "Not like this." "I know," he whispered, "but I deserve it." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of the city and the weight of everything unsaid. "Is it true?" she finally asked. "About the financial reports? The offshore accounts?" A long pause. Then, "Some of it, not all, but enough to look guilty. And in this world, looking guilty is the same as being guilty." She closed her eyes. "What will you do?" "I don't know," he admitted, voice cracking. "For the first time in my life, I have no plan." She thought of the mansion, his fortress of glass and control, now likely swarming with lawyers, appraisers, vultures circling a fallen king. "Damien," she said slowly, "the Miller lot, the sale, do you still want to go through with it?" He was quiet for so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, "More than ever." "Why?" "Because if I lose everything else," he said, voice low and raw, "I want to know I gave something real to someone who actually deserved it." Tears pricked her eyes. Not for him, not exactly, but for the man he might have been if pride hadn't blinded him. "Then meet me at the lot tomorrow," she said. "At noon. Bring the title. I'll bring the payment. I don't have the money to transfer yet," she added quickly, "but I have pledges, letters of intent. The city's matching half. We'll make it work." He exhaled, a sound like surrender. "You always find a way, don't you? I learned from watching you build an empire," she said softly. "Now I'm building something that won't crumble when the truth hits." He didn't respond right away. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, "I'm sorry, Elena, not for the money, not for the mansion, but for the years, for the silence, for the love he'd buried under ambition." "I know," she said, "but sorry isn't enough anymore." "No," he agreed, "it never was." They hung up. Outside, sirens wailed. Police, reporters, the sound of a legacy collapsing in real time. But in her small room, Elena opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. She hadn't planned to come, But Marta had called her at dawn, voice urgent. They're auctioning the property today. Public sale. Starting bids half what it's worth. Developers are circling like wolves. Elena knew what that meant. Luxury condos, private club, another monument to wealth with no soul. But as she watched the auctioneer set up his podium on the manicured lawn, the same lawn where she'd once sat barefoot, sketching while Damien worked late, her phone buzzed. It was Councilwoman Reyes. "Elena," she said without greeting. "I just got off the phone with the city's real estate division. The Miller Lot project has been fast-tracked. Full approval. And there's more." Elena's pulse quickened. "What?" "The city's acquired the Cross Mansion property through a distressed asset clause. They're offering it to your nonprofit at cost, as part of a larger urban renewal initiative." Elena froze. "You're saying they want us to take the mansion?" "Not as a mansion," Reyes clarified. "As a site. You demolish the main structure, keep the land, and build your expanded vision, housing, counseling, job training, even a childcare annex. The location is ideal. High visibility. Symbolic." Elena stared at the house. Her prison, her gilded cage, the place where she'd lost herself. And now, it could become the very thing she'd dreamed of building elsewhere. "I'll need to see the terms," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Come to City Hall in an hour," Reyes said. "But Elena, this is your moment. Not just to rebuild, but to rewrite the story." She hung up. Marta appeared beside her, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elena handed her the phone. "Read the message." Marta scanned it, eyes widening. Then she looked up at the mansion, her expression shifting from sorrow to something fiercer. "After everything that happened in there, you'd turn it into a sanctuary?" "Yes," Elena said softly. "Because if healing can happen anywhere, it should happen where the wound was deepest." That afternoon, in a sunlit conference room at City Hall, Elena reviewed the proposal. The numbers were tight, but feasible. The timeline aggressive, but possible. And the symbolism undeniable. As she signed the preliminary agreement, Reyes leaned forward. "There's one condition." Elena tensed. "What?" "The groundbreaking ceremony must happen within 60 days. And Damien Cross has been notified. He has the right to attend, though I doubt he will." Elena didn't flinch. "Let him come. This isn't about him anymore. It's about what rises after he's gone." Later that evening, she returned to the lot on 7th and Olive, the original site. Rosa and Luz were there, planting seedlings in repurposed buckets. "Did you hear?" Rosa asked, eyes bright. "They're giving you the big house on the hill." Elena knelt beside her. "We're not keeping the house, Rosa. We're tearing it down." Luz looked up, confused. "Why?" "Because sometimes," Elena said, brushing dirt from the girl's cheek, "you have to knock down the old walls to make room for new doors." That night, alone in her apartment, Elena opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. She drew the mansion, not as it was, but as it would be, gone. In its place, a low-rise complex with wide windows, a community garden where the pool once was, a playground where the helipad stood, and at the entrance, a plaque, "Built on Truth, for those who dared to begin again." Her phone lit up. A text from an unlisted number. "I heard. You're taking the mansion. I won't come to the ceremony. But know this, you're not erasing my legacy. You're redeeming it." She read it 3 times. Then she placed the phone face down on the desk. She didn't reply, because some things didn't need words. They needed action. And tomorrow she would begin, not with a wrecking ball, but with a shovel and a promise. She hadn't expected to see him, but there he was. Damien stepped out of a black sedan, not the armored limousine he used to favor, but a modest sedan, windows down, sleeves rolled up. He looked thinner, older. The sharp edges of his arrogance had softened into something quieter. Regret, maybe, or simply exhaustion. He walked toward her slowly, holding a manila envelope sealed with red wax. The old Cross family crest pressed into it like a ghost. "You came," she said, voice steady. "I had to," he replied. He stopped a few feet away, eyes scanning the house one last time. It feels strange. Handing over a life. It's not your life anymore, she said gently. It hasn't been for a while. He nodded, then held out the envelope. The full title, unencumbered. No liens, no hidden trusts, no backdoor clauses. Just yours. She took it. The paper was cool, heavy with finality. I could have sold it to a developer for triple what the city paid, he said, almost to himself. But I didn't want strangers turning it into penthouses for people just like I used to be. Elena looked at him, really looked. The man who once commanded boardrooms with a glance now stood before her with his hands empty. His pride in the dirt, just as the title had foretold. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't owe me anything. I owe you more than I can ever repay, he said quietly. But this is the only thing I have left that still means something. She hesitated. I'm not taking it as a gift, Damien. I know, he said, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. You never would. I'll buy it, she said firmly. With the funds we've raised, legally, publicly, every dollar accounted for. He nodded. Good, because this place, it shouldn't be a monument to me. It should be a home for people who never had one. A breeze stirred the dry leaves at their feet. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Then he reached into his coat again, this time pulling out a small, tarnished key. The original key, he said, from when we first moved in. I kept it all these years. Thought it meant something, ownership, control. He pressed it into her palm. Now it felt different. Not cold, not heavy, just metal. Take it, he whispered. Not because I'm giving it to you, but because you earned it. She closed her fingers around it. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a symbol of loss. Felt like a beginning. He turned to leave. Damien, she called after him. He stopped, but didn't turn. Will you come to the groundbreaking? She asked. He was silent for a long moment. Then, I don't think I'd be welcome. You wouldn't be a guest, she said. You'd be a witness. He finally looked back at her, eyes glistening. To what? To the moment a prison becomes a promise, she said softly. To the day a woman who was told she was nothing builds something that lasts. He swallowed hard, nodded once. Then he walked back to his car, shoulders straighter than when he'd arrived. Elena watched him go. In her hand, the key and the deed, two relics of a past that no longer defined her. Behind her, the mansion stood silent. But soon hammers would fall, walls would come down, and from the rubble something new would rise. Not in his name, in hers, and in the names of every woman who dared to walk away, only to return estate. Every dollar raised through bake sales, crowdfunding, city grants, and the quiet generosity of women who'd once felt invisible. She didn't wait for ceremony. She walked straight to the title office downtown, where a notary and a city representative waited. Damien wasn't there. She hadn't expected him to be. But as she signed the final documents, her name, Elena Marie Cross, inked in bold, deliberate strokes. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from an old number. You didn't have to pay, but I'm glad you did. It means you're not taking my past. You're claiming your future. She tucked the phone away without replying. Later that afternoon, she returned to the mansion alone. The gates were open now, no security, no cameras, no barriers. She stepped onto the marble foyer where she'd once stood in a ball gown, smiling for photos while her heart cracked in silence. Now, dust motes floated in the sunlight, and the echo of her footsteps was the only sound. She walked through room after room. The study where Damien had dismissed her dreams, the gallery where Isabella had staked her claim, the master suite where she'd cried herself to sleep more nights than she could count. But she didn't linger in grief. She measured, she sketched, she imagined. In the West Wing, she found a single painting still hanging, the fractured portrait Damien had bought, the one he said reminded him of a broken promise. She stared at it for a long time. Then she carefully took it down, rolled it, and placed it in a crate marked Archive Truth Collection. This building wouldn't be erased out of spite. It would be transformed with intention. That evening, She met Councilwoman Reyes and a small group of community leaders at the site. Rosa was there, holding Luz's hand. Marta brought tamales wrapped in cloth. Even a few former Cross Holdings employees, janitors, drivers, assistants, showed up, eyes wary but hopeful. "We start demolition next week," Elena announced, voice strong in the fading light. "But before we tear anything down, we plant something." She knelt in the center of the overgrown garden, once manicured to perfection, now wild with weeds and courage, and pressed a sapling into the earth. A California sycamore, resilient, deep-rooted, meant to grow for centuries. Rosa knelt beside her. "What do we call it?" Elena looked around, at the faces watching her, at the sky turning violet above the glass walls, at the life about to bloom where silence once reigned. "The Elena Center," someone suggested. She shook her head. "No, this isn't about me." "Then what?" Marta asked. Elena stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "The threshold, because everyone who walks through those future doors will be stepping into a new beginning." A murmur of approval rippled through the group. Later, as the others left, Elena stayed behind, standing on the terrace where Damien had once handed her the key and told her to leave. Now she held that same key in her palm, alongside the new deed legally hers. She didn't feel triumph. She felt peace, because she hadn't taken his mansion out of vengeance. She'd claimed it out of truth, and that made all the difference. As dusk settled, a car slowed at the end of the drive. She didn't turn, but she knew it was him. She felt his presence like a shadow she no longer feared. He didn't get out, didn't speak, just watched for a moment, then drove away. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. Elena stood on the second-floor balcony, watching Rosa lead a group of women through a financial literacy workshop. She wore no designer clothes, just a soft sweater and jeans. But her posture was straight, her eyes clear. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. Marta joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "They're asking for you downstairs. The press wants a quote for the anniversary feature." Elena smiled faintly. "Tell them the building doesn't speak. The women do." Marta chuckled. "You haven't changed." "I have," Elena said softly. "I just finally like who I became." Later that afternoon, as golden hour painted the courtyard in amber light, a familiar black sedan pulled up to the curb. Not sleek, not armored, just ordinary. Damien stepped out. He looked different, leaner, quieter, dressed in a simple gray coat, hair touched with silver at the temples. He carried no entourage, no briefcase, no pretense, just a small envelope. He didn't walk in through the main doors. He waited by the side gate, the one that led to the memorial garden Elena had planted where the mansion's helipad once stood. She saw him from the window. Her breath caught, but she didn't hesitate. She walked down, through the archway of blooming bougainvillea, and stopped a few feet away. "You came," she said. "I read about the program expansion," he said, voice calm. "The housing units for survivors of economic abuse. It's extraordinary." "It's necessary," she replied. He nodded, then held out the envelope. "I sold the last of my private holdings. This is the remainder after taxes, after debts. It's not a donation. It's an investment." She didn't take it. "In what?" "In the future," he said. "Yours, theirs." He gestured to the courtyard, where a young woman was teaching others how to fill out job applications. "I spent my life building monuments to myself. You're building ladders for others to climb." She studied him. No arrogance, no expectation, just humility. "Why now?" she asked. "Because I finally understand," he said, eyes glistening. "Power isn't owning.